They say you only have one shot at making a first impression, and I believe that's true in life. It's also true for the employee experience, the employee journey. One of our clients found that there was one specific element of the onboarding experience that reliably predicted 22% higher engagement at the first anniversary and a 9% reduction in voluntary attrition by the 2-year mark. And this is an insight that came from RingCentral. One of our clients, Mirko here, has led that charge very well at RingCentral. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of that partnership and then also pull from a few other case studies to kind of talk about what it is we do at Perceptyx and how we enable our clients to not only predict the future, but if you can predict something, then you have an opportunity, in my mind, even an obligation to do something about it and use the data. And the power, the critical component here that we're going to talk about is alignment. And so we're going to talk about alignment from a few different perspectives here. Number one is aligning the people analytics with business strategy. And this is a topic that's come up from a few of the speakers, and I think that's fantastic. If you start at the most basic level, every manager's responsibility, it's about driving performance and retention and finding the right balance between those two. If we focus so much on satisfaction and a positive experience and retention, sometimes performance can slip. If we go to the other end of this spectrum and we're going driving people, pushing people hard, it's all about performance, then unfortunately retention can be a challenge. And so at the most basic level, if we say, okay, these are the outcomes that we're looking to predict and influence using data and employee experience, then that's great. But we can go beyond just those basics of performance and retention and really begin to ask better questions. And that's one of the things also that I would say I love about RingCentral. Their leaders ask great questions. And it's not just great survey questions. They ask questions about the experience. I remember when I first started working with them, they said their stock had gone from $20 a share to $40. And the question from leaders, they said, we have really high retention. We have a very engaged workforce, but our stock's up 100%. What would happen if our stock began to dip? And we haven't been able to really answer that question because their stock is now over $200 a share. It has continued. It's like, if we could only go back. But the important piece is there is a real connection there, and asking those questions and aligning people's strategy with business strategy is going to be a critical component to doing this work well. A lot of us, I know, have backgrounds in I/O. We have a lot of passion about the work that we do. But even those clients that have a successful program over the years, when that program begins to wane and to falter a little bit, often what happens is we become so impressed and enamored with what we do and how we do it, we miss sight of why we're doing it. And when business leaders shift, when strategy shifts, when markets shift, if we're not in tune with that and continuing to anticipate and answer the questions that leaders have, even before they ask them, then we're not doing our job the way that we could. And so at Perceptyx, we love partnering with our clients, really understanding the business, getting underneath the people strategy. So some of the more complicated ones here are, beyond just basic performance and retention, how do we create a differentiated employee experience? What does the employee value proposition look like? And how do we really set ourselves up for success long term? We're working with a client right now. They're doing it was a $70 billion acquisition, and they've done workforce analytics to say, here are the roles that are going to be critical 5-10 years down the future, and we're creating demographic data in the system so we can segment the population and pay particular attention, say, what do we need to do according to the data and according to past behavior and current perceptions to ensure that we're retaining the talent that's not only useful for today, but setting us up for success long term. The second piece of alignment is aligning the listening strategy with the employee journey, the employee life cycle. So at RingCentral, they have ringtones. There's a 7-day onboarding survey, a 60-day onboarding survey. There's a census of the entire organization that happens every 6 months, so they do it twice a year. Plus, they do something called growth surveys. So when someone is promoted or changes roles, they get a pulse. And they do an exit survey. They've actually done a really great job with retention, so we don't have a ton of exit data. The exit survey example that I'm going to use is from one of our CPG Fortune 100 clients in a few slides. But where the real value comes in, it's not just about how frequently you measure or when you measure or even the questions you ask, but how are we able to draw connections across the employee life cycle? So for RingCentral, what we found was there was one component. If people at the 60-day mark were able to agree that they had a clear understanding of the product and technology at RingCentral, That predicted significantly higher engagement, so 22% higher engagement at the 1-year mark, and a 9% reduction in voluntary attrition at the 2-year mark. And that's specific to RingCentral. So they're actually able to take that information and say, you know what? Some of our early employees, so in the first 60 days, some of them are clearly getting the purpose, they get the understanding, they fit in the organization, and it sets them on a path. Then there are people in the organization that unfortunately were not able to get that same experience, and it put them on a different trajectory. So that first impression, that early experience with the organization made a significant difference in terms of their engagement and their ability to retain that talent long term. So they took that information, adjusted their onboarding experience, and now we're seeing that benefit in the organization. The other thing that we've been able to do with them is take attrition data. So a lot of our clients, 6 to 9 months after we complete a survey, they'll give us the employee IDs, say, here's everybody who's left the organization. We can look at that as a single group, and we can do a survivor analysis with that and say what are not only the response profiles, but what are the demographic profiles of higher attrition. Then we take that data, overlay that profile with more current survey data, and we begin to predict where we're going to see spikes in attrition. And we've done this with RingCentral, which has created the opportunity for them to have targeted interventions. We all have limited resources, not just financial, but time and attention. And so it becomes a question of where can we focus that work to have a disproportionately positive influence on the organization and the outcomes that we care about most. The next one here is aligning internal insights for action. So really doing something with the data, and this is something that we've been passionate about at Perceptyx really since our beginning. We launched as a company in 2003. The founders actually built what I believe is the first real-time automated data collection and reporting system back in the mid-90s, and they were using it with it's kind of held together with shoestring and bubblegum back in the 90s because a lot of the technology didn't exist. But the purpose of that was not just about the technology, it was really about giving people access to the data and enabling a corporate conversation to take place. If we ask people their opinion and make them wait weeks or months, which was the norm, especially 10, 15 years ago, that unfortunately communicates the wrong message to employees. We're going to ask them about their engagement. We're going to do the most disengaging thing we can do, which is absolutely nothing. Or the perception might be we're doing nothing with the data because we're not communicating it back. And we know employees don't naturally connect the dots the way that they should. So this is an element of integrating those insights and actions. And then the other piece that I would say is integrating data and teams across survey analytics. So we still have a lot of clients where onboarding is owned by one team, the annual survey is another team, the exit survey is another team. And unfortunately, those groups don't always work together, and certainly the data doesn't always work together the way that it should. And it was great to hear Dawn yesterday from Microsoft talk about the opportunity to create these teams together. So this is a very quick example in my last minute here. Fortune 100 CPG client, 27% of the people that left the organization were due to factors outside the organization. So returning to school, family reasons, health reasons. When we take that exit survey data and say, what were they telling us 6 months ago or a year ago on the annual survey, we see these people were very highly engaged. They were proud to work for the company. Their managers did a great job. It does not reflect poorly on us. We don't want to treat all voluntary attrition the same. But for the people that said they left because they were dissatisfied with their manager, they were telling us it's because their manager doesn't treat them with respect, keep commitments, or give them feedback. The people that said they were leaving because of lack of career opportunities, they had a very different response profile, and from the organization, there was almost no overlap between these groups. So they were able to have a targeted intervention for the one group and the other, rather than, again, treating the organization as an entire, painting the whole thing with a single broad brush. They can be more intentional and strategic in their resources. And with that, I would just remind people it's about aligning with business strategy, the employee experience, the actions we take, and the data that we have across the team so that we can predict and also influence the future. So thank you for the time.